Okay, so we're back. Welcome back to As If, a contemporary art podcast with me, Lisa Fevral, contemporary art and culture podcast now. Let's start with something fun today, which is the Louvre robbery. And if you're like, what's so fun about that? For some reason, this being such a light-hearted, in quotations, crime, it just really made my day. I don't know what to tell you. I think that honestly, the fact that they stole a bunch of crowns and jewels and other shit like that that belonged to the royals in like 17th century or whatever the hell, it doesn't really matter. First and foremost, who gives a shit, you know? Like I understand that a lot of people were kind of commenting, especially like people like Macron, being like, we're gonna find it, it's our French heritage. Like, okay, sure. To compare to all the other news that are usually ranging from something like, oh, it's the end of climate being inhabitable for people as we know it, to, oh, here's 500,000 people who were murdered yesterday by a state that shall not be named. It's kind of refreshing to have a story that does involve big numbers like, oh, jewels that are worth like over $100 million, while at the same time being absolutely of no consequence and not being a depressing type of story at all. I think that this tradition of thievery, of this like heists, you know, it's been lost to time. I think that because there's been so many cameras installed all over the world, just like everywhere in regular locations that are not really supposed to be surveilled or anything like that, we're just so used to being constantly watched that I feel like a lot of people don't do things like thieving, even though because the thing is, like, if someone is deciding to walk into a place and like just shoot everyone, I feel like they don't do it with an expectation of getting out of there without getting caught. It seems like they're usually kind of either planning on offing themselves afterwards as well, or kind of like know that they're gonna get caught. So it's very different in this sense of like them actually being captured, right? And when it comes to the robbery, the whole thing is like, oh, we're just gonna take shit, especially when they're taking it from museums. Like if someone were to steal something from Elon Musk, I wouldn't mind. I would actually think that's kind of cool. Sounds like a good plan. Sounds like a good Friday night to me. So I genuinely think that this is one of the funniest things ever because they just pulled up with a staircase that extends, you know, extended that staircase to the balcony that is like on the third floor or whatever the fuck, like I don't know, one of the floors that are above the first floor, obviously, and got in by cutting the glass to basically be like really quick with it or whatever. I don't know why you would do that instead of just breaking the glass, but I guess the fact that they were using tools and it looked like they were maintenance workers with, like, you know, the use of the ladder and being literally it's 9 a.m. or whatever the hell. Like it was literally right after the gallery opened. I would assume that anyone who passed by wasn't fazed by the situation at all because they genuinely thought it was just a bunch of maintenance workers. And it's honestly so fucking funny that they pulled this shit off in under 7 minutes. Fantastic, beautiful, gorgeous. Who, especially bitches like us who love Totally Spies, why wouldn't we find it really entertaining? I wish we could know all the details just because I'm nosy. And there's no one who's like hurt by this, to be honest. Like, I know that there's gonna be someone in the comments who's gonna come up with a way that this hurts something and being like, but not our heritage, you know, or something like that. But in reality, like, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, heists are the most fun, the funnest crime out of them all. You know what I mean? I think this was like the second floor. They just used an angle grinder. They were inside for only 4 minutes. When I told you that it took them 7 minutes, they were inside for only 4. They took off on 2 motorcycles afterwards. Absolutely fucking fantastic. I love everything about this. There's like a tiara, a necklace, that belonged to like Marie Amélie and Marie Louise. Who gives a shit? In any case, this is funny as hell. I absolutely love it. Hope they never get caught. Or if they do, I want a rundown and a recreation, because that sounds wonderful. That sounds funny as hell. Sorry to say. Last month, there was a group of thieves using a blowtorch, okay, and a grinder, and they stole gold that's worth approximately $700,000 from the Musée de l'Histoire Naturelle in Paris earlier the same month. 2 porcelain dishes and a vase worth about 11 million were stolen from the Adrien Debouche Museum in Limoges. I don't know how to pronounce it. Jacques Chirac Museum in Corse was robbed twice in a 3-day span. This is so funny. The most famous Louvre theft occurred in 1911 when the Mona Lisa was stolen. In 1976, masked thieves entered through the same window used by Sunday's suspects, a 19th century jeweled sword belonging to King Charles X. It has never been recovered. Oh my god, they never recovered it? I fucking love it here. The last high-profile robbery occurred in 1998 when Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot painting was cut from its frame and removed. It has never been recovered either. That's actually insane. The fact that it was in 1998 kind of gives me hope that these guys will get away. I don't know. I don't really give a fuck about robberies from rich people that much. I guess one thing that's bad is that people can't see it anymore, right? Because it's gonna be like in some rich person's personal collection or whatever the fuck, but I don't really care either way to look at them, to look at that display of gross stealing from the masses. So whatever. I thought that we're gonna, knock out some of the questions that you guys asked me when I asked you to comment with any questions that you wanted me to answer and stuff like that in the past. And one of the comments is from 13 Real Music. I'm living in the United States and so scared. I swear though that 15 years ago when evil bigots like Charlie Kirk died, it was socially acceptable to say rip bozo and laugh at them for living hateful lives. Y'all are safe in Canada for the most part, but can you talk about the don't speak ill of the dead bullshit? I feel like writers have covered both perspectives, but truly no one mourns the wicked shouldn't be a controversial take that makes you lose your job or anything. I think this is, in particular, that whole situation was very disturbing, and it's one of those examples of people who are absolutely batshit crazy and evil, like evil in the most like direct sense. Like they would torture, they would do anything, they don't give a fuck. Like that type of person would always be the first one to appear out of nowhere and be like, you can't say this. He was a father and a son and a brother to somebody, about the most diabolical person imaginable who has like similar beliefs to them. It would be like fuckers who are genuinely, they would be slave owners just like a generation ago, and those fuckers come in and they always say the most diabolical shit of like, you should be taking the high road. Well, I thought you guys were the nice ones. You were saying that we were the mean ones. And it's like, yeah, you systematically killed millions of people, and now you're like thinking that we're supposed to be taking the high road. You know that the high road doesn't get you human rights, right? It doesn't give you peace, like real peace. I'm not like, I feel like a lot of people who are in the West, they don't understand that when like I say peace, I don't mean quiet. I don't mean, oh, everyone shut the fuck up. When I say peace, I mean like obviously justice. Like I don't think peace can come without justice. That doesn't make any sense. It's kind of like people who were really mad at me in high school. And again, I did not realize why they were so mad about this because, as I said before, I did not have the context of the type of people that I would be encountering here. Because even though I have heard rhetorics of like, well, we had like a conflict or a war or whatever and we won, so this is like ours now, whatever the hell, like I've heard that before. I've never heard people be so chill and so like, well, let's just like move past it already about things like slavery and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? It just, I am absolutely horrified by like basically having conversations with people randomly here and realizing that the lack of understanding of like the basics of politics, which I also had the same issue. This is not me speaking about this outside of understanding where this issue is coming from, right? Like, yeah, I had the same issue when I was like 19, in terms of not understanding global politics and our involvement in global issues. But I think there's a sort of problem that I'm seeing over and over again, especially with people who don't understand why saying shit like, oh my god, you can't say this about a person, about someone like Charlie Kirk and stuff like that. The reason why a lot of people that I run into in the wild, people who are not like from my circles, those people oftentimes just misunderstand where the issues are coming from that they are experiencing themselves. And there's this crazy redirection that's going on where they constantly think that everything that is bad, or like, for example, they don't have a job or they can't get a job, their kids will never own homes, they will never have this, they will never have that. I genuinely had this conversation. I know that this is kind of convoluted right now, but I swear this is kind of tied together to this conversation of no one mourns the wicked, and also this conversation of not understanding that not everyone can be debated with or taken into consideration, like when we are building a future together, right? Basically, the limits of what is our acceptable politic. It's really crazy that someone like Charlie Kirk can exist in America without persecution, but people who are against a genocide are absolutely like literally they lose their jobs, they can't continue, they usually, if they don't lose their job, their career suffers anyway. There's also a lot of social issues and a lot of things like this network of where the money is coming and going. We have like this issue recently where a lot of our money that was going to what we thought was our organizations in Canada, like the Jewish organizations, we thought it was going to our organizations here, like the tax dollars, and turns out that it was sent to the state that shall not be named, which is very fantastic and wonderful and not at all in conflict of interest or against our law. It is this problem of what is acceptable, and a lot of the time people would be complaining about something that comes from directly from capitalism, and that is capitalism, because for some reason people here, even though they're diehard capitalists, they are quite uneducated about the structure of it. I mean, there is nothing wrong. Well, I mean, to me, there is something wrong with being like, like loving capitalism and whatever. However, it does not mean that it is for everyone. And obviously, there is at least something to discuss there when it's just economic systems that are being discussed. However, I noticed that only the billionaires are actually aware of how fucked the system is and how much like it's rigged for them, because they are the ones who are rigging it, right? And like, it's not even the fucked up system, it's the system is working like it's supposed to. What I'm saying is like it was built for them, not for everybody else. And I think that there's this weird misconception where people constantly blame the wrong things for what is the issue. We have talked about identity politics before, where people try to find a scapegoat and then be like, oh, it's the immigrants, or oh my god, it's the Indians. Well, at least in Canada right now, that's the problem that we're having. Like, it's just such a dumbass approach to everything. But I realized that the reason for it is honestly, at its core, at its root, is the fact that people who are living in capitalist countries, who are capitalist and are supporting that and can't even fathom a conversation about anything like leftist, they don't know the basics of political science. And I think it's a huge, huge issue that in North America, the way that it's taught in our schools, I experienced it myself because like I did go to high school here, and I didn't go to the entirety of high school here. I went to 2.5 years because like I moved when I was like 16 or so. So my understanding of politics here was that the Liberal Party, which is Democrats, like the equivalent would be Democrats in America, are a leftist party. That's what was taught in class verbatim. To those of you who are not from North America and you're like Europeans, I have a lot of Europeans in my like stats. I know that you are up there, and you guys might find it really confusing, but I'm telling you for real that this is what is being taught, that like they genuinely don't know that left of the political spectrum is anti-capitalist parties, ideas, movements, etc. They genuinely think that a liberal party or a Democrat party is the left, which does make sense why it pushes so many people away from it, because instead of being actual like different policies, what they're offering to people is just policing their language, and that's it. You know, like if you're policing someone's language but you're offering them solutions, they might listen to you. If you're only policing their language and you're constantly implying that they're dumb for not knowing all of the new terms and stuff like that, which like I'm, for example, keeping up with those terms because all of my friends, we're all we're artists, you know, like we're always involved in some kind of new shit in terms of like society, right? But not everyone is. Not everyone's job is to be in these places, in spaces, and to meet different types of people and just naturally be up to date, right? So we kind of lose a lot of people, specifically not in the conversation of whether they even know what's bothering them about their lives and stuff like that, but because of where they shift the blame. And of course, there is like this conversation of like shifting the blame on people who are minorities and stuff like that, and this like approach of blaming somebody or whatever. This is a very famous approach that famously Nazis used. But of course, it's also honestly the fact that people are so unaware of what capitalism is. I think that one of the biggest things for me that really changed my perspective was the fact that I didn't know that bailouts existed for corporations. When you can't get a bailout for your personal credits, even just for a small apartment, but huge corporations, they're worth billions of dollars, can get a bailout, is absolutely nuts. And it's just normalized here. People just don't even see it as illegal or abnormal or fucked up. Like they genuinely just kind of go, well, yeah, of course they got a bailout because, well, how about all of our jobs? And it's like, they don't pay you. They don't pay you well. They don't pay you even the legal amount. Fuck, I can't even, like, I have so many things to fucking complain about. It's crazy. Like the Charlie Kirk situation, bitch, I was absolutely horrified by the response that people had, because I was like, you can't be fucking serious. Even that is not far enough for you. He is genuinely saying the most fucked up shit. And then also, like, from that, all of us learned about fucking gropers, which I didn't know about. I didn't know they existed. And it's still not far enough for you to be like, ugh. And I know why this is the thing, is because in a lot of Western countries, you were infiltrated or you had it from the very beginning. So many fucking fascists who weren't offed after they have committed horrible crimes. So now we're just stuck with a bunch of people who were made in these families, and this mentality trickled down through generations, and we're dealing with people who genuinely think the most antisocial shit and think it's normal. Like we're in a weird predicament where so many like really weird aggressive mentalities are normalized. And I think that a lot of the time people think that if you are someone who is standing up to this shit, or you actually trying to fight for better for everyone, you are some kind of fucking nun or some priest or something like that, who is kind of like this idea that they have like a Dalai Lama, which I don't like the motherfuckers for clear obvious reasons, but in the West, they have a really good rep. They kind of have this mentality of, well, if you are an activist and you give a fuck about society, that means you're a saint and you're not allowed to do anything that is aggressive. And if you do anything aggressive for the cause, you are basically committing something that is not only illegal, which it usually is, because touching things is illegal. You can do whatever you want to people, but things, don't you dare. There's this mentality that you can't actually do anything. You're supposed to vote shit in over generations. And I'm gonna tell you one thing. When the revolution happened, they made all of the decisions, they made everything. Like, for example, in one day, all the women got their rights. We didn't have to wait for a century to vote those rights in one by one, fighting every lunatic and every little bitch to get our rights. And by our, I mean the Soviets. Of course, now it's a different conversation. Don't even start me on the type of bullshit that I saw today that Putin said. I am going to fucking lose it. In any case, if the actual administration, the actual people who are representing the masses, right? If they are the ones who are actually making, like, writing down the laws, writing down the will of the people and stuff like that, the things that seem impossible to us right now, like having actual protected rights, would be a thing within the day. It wouldn't be something that would take centuries to achieve. And somehow, this is what like really triggered, like really pissed me off in high school, is that in class I was like, why don't we just do it today? At least we could decide, like, okay, like there's like people who are like religious or whatever, and they think that abortions are like bad or whatever. Regardless of that, there's a person who's already formed and thinking and are their own person who's carrying that fetus. So they're supposed to be the ones that are protected. Everyone mind your fucking business kind of approach, right? So like in one day, we can just give everyone human fucking rights, and maybe at least we would be somewhere closer to what we actually want, right? But that would also have to involve what? What? Wealth distribution, redistribution, because nothing is an actual change unless it's with real things, with like things that actually provide you with food, shelter, and other shit like that. I just don't understand how, like, the audacity of those slave owners. We had the same situation before the actual revolution, where they were like, well, you're free now. Yes, we keep all the wealth that you made, that we stole from you. Yes, you still kind of work for me, but now you like get a wage and you can leave if you don't like working for me. But me and all of my bourgeois friends, we are in cahoots. So if you go and try to work for somebody else, I'm gonna be real pissed about it. They're gonna be real pissed about it. You're gonna end up on the streets. So there's no like real freedom, let alone real justice, where there would be complete redistribution of all the wealth that has been created by the workers and not by those motherfuckers who are sitting in their towers. This video was supposed to be about art. Goddamn. Let's get back to art. Basically what I'm saying is 13 real music. I hate this shit, and it shouldn't be controversial. None of this should be controversial. I don't understand, like when I said in class that education should be a right, not a privilege, and they got really offended. We went to see Takashi Murakami in the fucking gallery, in the Vancouver Art Gallery. 3 levels, 3 floors of his artworks. And this is a mofo that made that statue of a guy who is diddling himself, and there's like a sperm flying around him like a lasso, and made a statue of a woman with huge knockers and milk from those knockers flying around. Because, like, for a man, he's getting pleasure. This is like an erotic situation that in which he is the one who is the subject. And then somehow in his deranged mind of that fucking Takashi Murakami, he thinks that that statue of a woman with big knockers where there's milk flying around has the same connotations, as if milk happens when there's orgasm, as if this huge knockers wouldn't be a fucking pain to carry around, as if that's even possible. The fact that they are kind of companions to each other, those statues, and this is not something that is making them pissed. Like this connotation, they don't think it's offensive, but me saying that education is a right is offensive to them. What kind of world are we living in that these are the motherfuckers who are our professors, people who are supposed to hire us, supposed to be our mentors, supposed to be leading the societies that we're creating? I genuinely don't understand what the fuck is wrong with everybody, but this is a situation that we're in, and I don't think that a nice approach is gonna do it. Sorry to say, it's inevitable, and I hate that we can't just get just a peaceful life. But this isn't peace. Do you know what I mean? Like, even if we're quiet and even if we are getting our moments of peace here and there in terms of just enjoying a thing or two, this isn't living. This is living like a dog, surviving for the sake of survival, and not even like a dog. I don't even know what to name this. Living like a human being in this century, that's what it is. Anyway, art. So my mom wanted me to talk about this artist that she heard about who had all of her artwork stolen by her husband. And I'm sure you have heard about her because she had a movie made about her life. And like, this is very classic Hollywood bullshit. Her name is Margaret Keane. And the reason why I wanted to bring her up is because she makes paintings of these kids and women and animals with really big eyes. And if you're like, that sounds like something I've seen in the arts, in the biggest galleries right now out there and stuff like that, you're probably thinking of Yoshimoto Nara. Yoshimoto Nara, a very famous Japanese artist who is technically grouped into this super flat movement, which I think honestly is a bit reductive and strange. I think it's kind of like, if you know the movement itself, and an episode on super flat, and I think it was like season 1 episode 2 of this podcast, like for real. It was a long time ago, but actually I rewatched it recently and I was like, this is actually pretty good. I kind of snapped on that one. So go watch it if you want to hear more about super flat. But Yoshimoto Nara is one of those artists out of the super flat group where, first of all, I don't know if he fits the super flat that well. I think that he's kind of tangential to it because of its the visuals being still somewhat inspired by manga and anime and stuff like that. I know that Yoshimoto himself said that it's more inspired by ukiyo-e, but I think that with him and with Takashi Murakami, both of them always say that it's ukiyo-e inspired, and I just don't really see it in their current work. In their early work, I can see it. In their current work, not so much. Now, I think that Yoshimoto Nara is better in terms of being less of a creep to compare to all the other super flat artists. I do still think it's weird that all of his paintings feature a little girl, and he has mentioned that he kind of like sees himself in her or something like that, that like he's kind of painting himself. Still, whenever there's a Japanese man and underage girls in the same sentence is gonna always make me uncomfortable, knowing their art history, knowing how they are now with contemporary art that they produce, knowing Takashi Murakami's work as well. It's I think it's fair of me to kind of be a little skeptical of these guys. I thought it was really interesting that Margaret Keane has never gotten out of this perception of her as this kitschy artist. Like, she was never seen as a fine artist, even though there's this whole story of her basically making these paintings in the 50s and 60s, and her husband completely taking credit for it. And she basically couldn't really do anything about it because he was a very abusive person. He would control her to the point where she wouldn't be able, like, she wasn't allowed to leave the house, and he would call every hour to check that she was home. So like, if she wouldn't be home, there would be like a whole fucking thing. So she's, as far as I understand, he was even physically abusive, but I don't know the specifics of everything. This isn't as important for this conversation, but this is just like an explanation as to why this even happened and why her work was stolen by him. And why she didn't say anything for the duration of their marriage. Now, she actually had a court battle with him because he still was standing on business, being like, this is mine, I painted it. And basically what the judge did, they were like, okay, so paint right now in court. And he refused while Margaret did painting within like 15 minutes or so. It basically proves to everyone that, yeah, he doesn't fucking paint this. Like, even if he would have tried, honestly, if you don't do a specific style of art right, you still wouldn't be able to get it right. So she got her $4 million. That's a pretty big figure to get for these paintings. But I also think, it's really interesting that Yoshimoto Nara was seen as a fine artist right out of the gate. There was never any conversation of him being too kitschy, I guess. There is, of course, this conversation of super flat having a lot of connections to pop art. Pop art is kind of 50s, 60s American art that was very much inspired by consumerism, taking low art, lowbrow products and elevating them to high art A lot of it is, of course, Andy Warhol, yada yada yada. Like, I don't have to explain. I don't think I have to explain Andy Warhol anymore. But the point being, it does have some connections in that regard. And Andy Warhol himself commented on Margaret Keane and her work, being like, I actually think her work is great, and obviously it like resonates with a lot of people or whatever the hell. I think that there is a lot of similarity between her work and Yoshimoto Nara's work. I wouldn't say that it's like similar in a sense where you would have to be like, oh my god, this is just ripping off Margaret Keane, because she was the first one who did this kids and women with big eyes. It's not like that, but I do think it is very, very curious that she doesn't get the same treatment as Yoshimoto Nara. However, I do understand that she didn't have a strong conceptual footing. However, I don't think that Yoshimoto Nara's work is that academic. I think that he knows how to speak about it in a way that would give an impression that it's academic. And I kind of think that that's the most that you can expect from his work, because when you listen to what he talks about and what kind of process he goes through to create his paintings and stuff like that, it's or sculptures or whatever the hell he does, different types of media with his processes. It's really interesting that he uses a lot of pop culture, a lot of things like music and stuff like that, and a lot of it is quite popular, even if it's like not pop music as a genre. It's still quite popular music, and there is an element of his middle-aged manness kind of giving him more legitimacy than he deserves, kind of like Kiss, like all this men thinking that Kiss are so subversive and so crazy. And I have talked about it, like I think that they're just posers, and like who gives a shit, couldn't care fucking less about their art. And I think that there is an aspect of him being like an older dude where it does play into his hands. Now, another thing that plays into his hands is, of course, the right type of Asian that he is in the West, especially like to get the recognition in the West. I'd say, I think that we all know that because of the way that Japan rebranded after the World War II, and the way that America minimizes the involvement of Japan in World War II, and minimizes the impact of the fact that they used a fucking nuclear weapon. This is the one and only time that it was used on a population. It is absolutely bonkers to use it, but they did it. For what? At that point, it was not necessary. I don't know what the fuck their problem is, but this relationship that they have developed as Japan has become like a poster child of the West in East Asia and Asia in general, I think that they have a very special connection. Whenever you go to, like, we literally went to this event, I think Bassistan was there, where this brand in Vancouver was talking about their jeans and how like they produce this new type of jeans or whatever the fuck. And of course, it was two white dudes, Canadians, who were like 45, 50, talking about how these jeans, we got this denim and we gave it to this Japanese factory, and they did what Japanese people do. They, of course, made it so much better, and there's so much innovation and other things like that. And it's like, these are the same mofos, when you talk to them, they would be saying the most vile shit about the Chinese, and you're like, so you don't care about innovation. You don't care about actual like genius of engineering, because otherwise you would have agreed, or at least you would have known about the impact that the Chinese have had on biology, physics, engineering, and all of those spheres, fucking architecture. You would have known that already if you gave a fuck. Of course you don't. I can see that you don't, because your genes suck too. Dude. In any case, it's just one of those conversations where like you just realize that they have these preferences for certain nations or certain like subsections of nations and stuff like that, because of what role those nations played in imperialism. Like they kind of fuck with it heavy, and it's really weird. It's really, really weird, because like if you ask them straight up, like, do you fuck with imperialism, they would be like, no, no, of course not. Democracy, yay. But then in the same breath, they act like this, and you're like, I don't think you understand how anything works if that's your approach to all of this. And you're not young enough for this to be like an age issue or a fixable fucking issue at this point. I don't even know. Like, how can you be that ignorant at 50? I don't. You would have to purposefully avoid absorbing any new information whatsoever, I feel like. I think it's really interesting, basically, that Yoshimoto Nara has a different reputation than Margaret Keane. I do think that Yoshimoto Nara is obviously a lot more well read in terms of art. He knows who to invoke, who to reference when he's talking about his art to get a bit of a better reaction from people who are in the arts, you know? And I do like the way that he uses color in some of his paintings, though. Not like there are some paintings I do like. There are some that I do like. It doesn't mean that I'm gonna let the concept being weak go. Sorry to say. Sorry to say. The one thing that I do think is interesting in his work is the fact that the kids are always kind of like have like a knife with them or something like that. There's a sort of agency that those kids have in terms of like, I don't know, I guess having, yeah, like having agency in one way or another. I would say that Keane's work, like, it does have kitschy qualities. I think that there's nothing wrong with that per se. Andy Warhol was fucking everywhere, and as if he's not kitschy. But I think with the way that she was talking about it and stuff like that, I think that a lot of her theory wasn't there in terms of how she spoke about it, and it's just kind of like a marketing issue in my opinion. It wasn't dramatically worse than those works to justify, you know, kind of putting her in a kitsch category and making her kind of like a lowbrow artist for the rest of her life. It's really interesting that she isn't referenced on a lot of websites that are kind of like a catalog of artists and their works and stuff like that. So she's especially like a fine artist, right? So she's not taken that seriously. But Yoshimoto Nara never had to have that kind of problem ever, which is just really, really something. Oh yeah, the one of the paintings, it's really like made me laugh. One of his paintings, I think it's Headache from 2012. His little girl character, and she has a shirt on that says 1 in 100, and hundred, the word hundred is misspelled, and it made me remember this class that I had. That's the class where I was at odds with my professor. I kind of criticized our university for being a corporation and not an, you know, an institution for education, and criticized them like coming up with bullshit courses that we had to go back and take and pay $700 for, where the professor walked in and she was like, let's make, you guys, let's figure out what this course is going to be about. And it wasn't an exercise where you have to like kind of like participate, but she has a plan already. No, no. She genuinely wanted you to fucking make a curriculum for her. So in that class, my work, it was a bunch of posters and a bunch of zines and stuff like that that were very, it was just black and white, and it was a lot of statements, and those statements were about just a life as a student and a life as a person where you're kind of constantly made to be like on the edge of not being able to finish school, not being able to pay your rent, not being able to do this and that, right? The kind of like a reflection of statistics of what's going on in Canada. There were some stats too, you know, the way they got pissed at me. And I think I've mentioned this story a couple of times. Let me know in the comments if I've told that story in its entirety, because I cannot remember. And maybe you can't remember either, but one of you might remember, right? That work, she gave me a C for it because I said education is a right. How dare I? How fucking dare I? It's so crazy of me to say such a thing. But also, on top of it all, well, not on top of it all, but she kind of justified it by being like, there's a spelling mistake here. Can you imagine? And I know that some people are going to be like, well, the spelling mistake, it makes sense that it would like kind of fuck up your grade or whatever. I don't think you should fuck it up that hard, especially considering that they don't mind it in other works. We had a lot of international students who had English that was a lot worse than mine, and I don't think that they should have been penalized for it. I'm just saying that this was very intentional. And at that point, I think I only spoke English for like 4 years, maybe. And in an academic setting, yeah, sometimes you make a mistake here or there in terms of spelling. Like, what? It's not the end of the world. But also, it really made me laugh because it was this collection at LACMA where Yoshimoto Nara's work was displayed, and it's a massive painting like that has a misspelled word on it that he just misspelled because he's Japanese. Like English is not, I don't think he even speaks English. I don't want to be like presumptuous about it, like just assume shit, but I think I think he doesn't really speak English. He just knows some words and stuff like that. Like this is kind of the impression that I got from the interviews that I've seen, but those interviews were conducted in Japanese, so I don't know. There was this collection at LACMA, and I think that there's a video that has their like interview of the either curator or whoever works for LACMA talking to Yoshimoto Nara, and they talk about all of those artworks, and you can see that in that work, it's just like completely misspelled and it's not part of the concept. It's not supposed to be part of the concept. And it just made me really like, it made me laugh because I was like, this is crazy how like differently things get perceived. Like if you are the right type of foreigner, you are seen as like an intelligent person who's just not speaking their language, and like those mistakes are not noticed as much because they're like, well, yeah, fucking obviously, like this is not their first language. But then there's all of those nations that, nationalities, like just try and make that fucking same mistake while being Filipino. They're gonna torture you. They're literally gonna be so fucking pissed about it and be like, and act as if you're a dumbass. You could be the smartest fucking person in the room for whatever reason. Like, for example, you're like really good at physics and then you came to study physics here or whatever the hell, right? For whatever reason, you did that. And if you make that mistake, immediately everyone just assumes that you have made a mistake and it's because you're dumb, not because it's a cultural difference or you just have different languages or whatever the hell. But if you're Yoshimoto Nara or someone from favorable foreign countries, it's like charming even, it's really 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 sinister the way that these preferences can be traced to international relationships, especially to like a lot of nefarious relationships, and how it can impact their impression of people. Because the way that people jump on you if they see you as someone from like a third world country or something is absolutely insane to compare to everybody else. You could be French and have a completely, absolutely unintelligible, like your accent, for example, because like it's not your language, you don't really speak English, whatever, right? Like you have a thick accent, that's fine. But you could do that like as a French person, and everyone's like, yeah, like they're French, so whatever. But as soon as it's someone from like India, Philippines, anyone Slavic, immediately everyone's like acting as if they're talking to a dumb little kid, or like someone who is having a hard time keeping up with the conversation. Like the attitude, the talking down to is crazy. Anything else I wanted to touch on today? I think so. I think I had something else. Oh yeah, I was gonna mention in my last video, someone commented about Ray, that girl who's singing that song about Where's My Husband? That girl, she also made that song. Fuck, what was it? It was like really big too. I don't remember, but basically Ray, that she's friends with Nara Smith, the resident I'm gonna make tried wifery look cuter than it is just so I can indoctrinate kids. Horrifying, horrible. I mean, I kind of expected it though, because not gonna lie, Ray, when she released that song, first of all, I think that in her first album, with that hit track that she had, I also heard some other tracks that rubbed me the wrong way, the lyrics. And I think that she always had like this internalized misogyny. And now that I heard her song being like, Where's my husband? I was like, oh, in this day and age, in this political climate, releasing a song like that as a single to not even a side track is really something. And then you guys commented about the Nara thing, and I looked it up and I was like, oh, fucking of course. This is wonderful. I just love it here. Basically, I was gonna mention her and that song, but I don't even want to fucking talk about it because I'm so fucking pissed today already. There's no reason for me to be more pissed than I already am. And I also wanted to say that in that Lord video, I was a little harsh on her, like commenting or talking about her eating disorder. True. I think I was a little too harsh on her. I do think that we need to have a conversation about the fact that not every issue is equal, because I do understand that there's this mentality of like, not, we're all suffering, whatever, whatever, and like it doesn't mean that you can't be sad if something, like if there's like someone who's starving somewhere else, whatever. Yes, but also we need to be real with ourselves sometimes, and I think that this is the reason why you talk about certain things with certain people does not mean that this is kind of a thing that makes Lord a horrible person or something like that. Or I don't even feel that angry or not angry, but that strongly about it anymore to like say like, oh, you need to get over it or whatever, because I guess it's maybe because I'm in a better mood than I was in that particular episode. But I think that we do need to talk about this, because there is definitely, for example, cancer patients, we don't, like when I was a cancer patient and stuff like that, we don't really compare our cancers per se. However, there's still an understanding that if you have a cancer that is quite common and there's like a very concrete path to getting treated, and that path has a survival rate of higher than 80%, you're in a better position than somebody who has a terminal cancer, with the path being very, very, very difficult to chart, and you not, like, no one knowing what's gonna work and what's not gonna work. Those two are completely different experiences. One has a date set. For me, it was a date like, oh, 4 months of complete hell, and at 2 months you're gonna know whether it worked or not. So it was 2 months of complete hell, and then 2 months more of really feeling shit, but you would know whether you'll live or die. 4 months is very different than fighting for years and still not knowing whether you're gonna survive another month or whatever. Two completely different experiences, and you just know that inside. And yes, we don't compare, we don't sit down and we're like, well, you have it worse, I have it better, or whatever the hell. We don't do shit like that. However, we all implicitly know this. So whenever you talk to somebody who is terminal, you don't say shit like why me or whatever the hell. You know? You talk about something else. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to these things. It's like, yeah, I was too harsh on her. I do think that eating disorders are hard to deal with and stuff like that, but it's still not comparable to a disease that will just eat you up alive, whether you're gonna be fucking tied down and fed, like force fed or not. Like there's some diseases that you can do whatever the hell is under the sun, like to treat it, to do something about it and whatever, and it's still not gonna work. And then there's this, you know what I mean? Like there's still a difference that needs to be acknowledged. And I'm not the type of person who's like, yeah, I definitely have it just as bad as this person or whatever the hell. Because no, you don't. No, I don't. And we need to be serious from time to time and be normal about shit. Yes, you can complain. I'm a complainer. It does not mean that you need to frame it this way, especially now. I don't know. I think that I'm just sick and tired of celebrities, to be honest. It's just how it is. I'm sick and tired of people who are detached from reality, who don't actually feel the heaviness of the situation that we're in. So I'm just really not a fan of them in general nowadays. But I don't think that it was, fair to say it in such a harsh way. It's not necessary, I don't think. Anyway, see you guys next time with another episode.